Hello, Reading Zone Book Club. My name is Dashe Roberts, and I am the author of the Sticky Pines series. I am originally from the United States. I am from California, but I now live in London, where I write books. The Sticky Pines series is a science fiction mystery adventure series with a lot of humor and a little bit of horror as well. And so far, there are 2 books in the series. The first is called The Bigwoof Conspiracy, and the second one is called The Thing at Blackhole Lake. The Sticky Pines series follows the adventures of a tenacious preteen named Lucy Sladen, who is obsessed with the supernatural and is determined to find out the truth about the nature of the universe and about the strange things that are happening in her hometown of Sticky Pines. In the Bigwoof Conspiracy, Lucy, who is obsessed with UFOs, sneaks out late one night during a thunderstorm to investigate the unexplained disappearances of people in her hometown. Now, at first she's certain that UFOs are to blame, but that night Lucy finds much more than she bargained for. She finds a huge, hairy creature, a strange set of hovering lights, a well-dressed newcomer named Milo Fisher, and a deep-rooted secret. In The Thing at Blackhole Lake, Lucy and Milo Fisher are no longer speaking after the events that occurred in the Bigwoof Conspiracy, but I'm not going to tell you why because that would be a spoiler. But in order to avoid speaking to Lucy, Milo decides to leave a Halloween party early one night and walk home on his own, alone, through the woods at night. To speed up his journey, Milo decides to cut across Blackhole Lake in an abandoned rowboat he discovers not far from the shore. That is where our story begins. Orienting his position with his phone's compass, he took hold of the oars on either side and propelled himself due north. Soon, Milo was rowing in a comfortable rhythm. The summer he'd spent training with Harvard's crew team really seemed to be paying off. Dad was right about one thing: it pays to be well-rounded. It was eerily quiet out on the lake, with no sound but the rush of water as Milo paddled. To cheer himself up, he started whistling the first song that came into his head, which happened to be the theme to the 1950s TV show, Lassie. He rowed faster, his whistles echoing across the glassy water, a song reaching out into the abyss. Milo was near the middle of the lake, quite far from shore, when he noticed that his feet didn't seem to be getting any drier. He stopped whistling and looked down. There was a puddle in the bottom of the boat, up to his ankles. His stomach turned as he realized that the boat was slowly filling up with water. Leaping lemons! There's a leak! Frantically, he tried to locate a hole, but to no avail. Of course this boat didn't come unmoored on its own. Of course somebody abandoned it on purpose. What was I thinking? Foolish, stupid, reckless. Milo took a deep breath. He was halfway across the lake. If he went quickly, he might still make it to the other side. He started to row when he heard someone whistle the first few notes of the Lassie song. There were no other boats around. Was it coming from the shore? "Hello," Milo called. The whistle sounded again. There was a slight trill to it, as if someone were whistling and blowing bubbles at the same time. Was someone out swimming on this cold October night? Unbelievable. This town really is filled with kooks and crazies. Kerthonk! Something heavy landed inside the boat, splashing puddle water onto Milo's face. Gah! He felt around the boat and pulled up a fist-sized rock. Who threw this? His voice echoed across the silent depths. There was no response. He looked up, half expecting to see the drone-snatching owl taunting him from above, but he saw nothing but celestial objects in a sparsely clouded sky. Something moved to the right of the boat, distorting the moon's reflection on the water. Milo swore he could hear the faint sound of laughter. "Who's there?" The boat rocked as something brushed against it from underneath. Something big. Panicked, Milo started rowing with all his might. He was startlingly aware his craft was now dipping perilously low under the weight of the growing puddle. He was sinking. "Note to self," he panted, red-faced. "Never go out in Sticky Pines alone." He was practically flying through the water now. "Never go out in Sticky Pines at night," he gasped as something pulled at his oar. "Never leave home in Sticky Pines, period." Forcefully, the paddle was yanked out of Milo's hand. He yelped as it slid out of its socket and slipped under the water with a sad little ploop. He was now stranded. Then, just a meter away, he saw something emerge from the gloomy depths. The water rippled as something thin and dark rose above the surface. Milo's chest tightened. "Is that a snake?" If it was the biggest one he'd ever seen. He vaguely remembered something Lucy had said about an abyssal sea serpent in Blackhole Lake. Are all of her nonsense beliefs actually real? With quavering hands, he held out his flashlight phone like a protective talisman. Another serpent popped up to his left, followed by 2 more behind him, and 1 more at the front. Milo gulped. "I'm surrounded." Another serpent slithered quickly up the side of the hole. Milo squealed, picked up one of his shoes, and threw it at the snake with a thunk. The slimy creature slurped back into the murky deep. Milo squinted at the water, where he could just make out a large, shadowy form below the surface. Those aren't serpents, he realized. They're tentacles. He was floating directly above a giant, squid-like creature whose arms were encircling his boat like a hand about to snatch an apple from a tree. What will happen to Milo? What was that strange creature? You'll have to read to find out. Now, clearly, this is a science fiction story that includes monsters. And you might wonder what makes a science fiction story different from something like a fantasy story or a horror story that also might include strange creatures or monsters. And the difference is that science fiction includes an explanation for what is happening. So something that could happen in our real world, but maybe hasn't been discovered yet or hasn't been invented yet. But there is a real world explanation for why things are happening. So if you see a monster in a science fiction story, it is either a mutant creature who's been exposed to nuclear waste, or it's an alien, or it is a trans-dimensional being that has never been discovered, or it is a strange species that is yet unknown to mankind. But there's always an explanation that could take place in our world as to why these things are happening. Science fiction stories also might include inventions, things that haven't been invented yet, but that could be invented. So things like spaceships that can travel faster than the speed of light, or flying cars, or in my stories, I include things like drones that are very advanced and a little bit more advanced than the ones we have now, with abilities that we don't currently have, but that could happen. I also include some devices and substances, things that are invented by people and have an explanation, but that don't currently exist. And the possibility of things being real is really what makes science fiction tick. And if you are interested in writing science fiction, a fun thing to do is to think about what might happen 100 years into the future. So there are a lot of science fiction stories that take place in the future, stories that happen after space travel has been invented, traveling through space indefinitely or faster than the speed of light, or time travel, or a time when new inventions make our human lives seem so unbelievably different than they are today, but things that we could imagine could actually happen in real life. So a fun writing exercise to try is to imagine The ways that the world might be different 100 years from now. You could think of 3 different ways specifically. So how will life on Earth have changed in 100 years? What kinds of things might be invented or might had to have been invented in order to perpetuate human life on the planet in 100 years? Will we have jetpacks, or will everybody have to live deep under the ocean in bubble habitats that have been invented because the sea levels have risen? Will people still live in the same kinds of houses now? Or will we have robot servants that will do everything for us? Or will your house talk to you? Would humanity have figured out how to travel through space? If we do, how would that be possible? In Star Trek, they have invented the warp drive. That is their invention as to how humans can travel faster than the speed of light. If we travel through space, what other kinds of planets might we find? What would school look like in 100 years? Will everything be digital? Will people be learning in pods at home with a holographic teacher? Or will we enter different kinds of school buildings where everything is automated and all of our schoolwork is read by androids who are grading all of our work? What kind of clothes would people wear in the future? Will we have digital buttons, things that zip themselves up automatically? Will we have self-cleaning jumpers? And what other types of things might people be using? Will everybody be wearing high-tech masks in the future to protect ourselves from germs or from pollution? There are so many different kinds of things that could happen in the future. And the fun thing to do with science fiction is to really use your imagination and have fun with it. And I hope you do. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you next time.